You've heard of swatching your paints, but have you heard of swatching your brushes? That's what I'll be doing today in this video. I'm Sandy Allnock. Welcome to my channel. And I have been kind of on a bender with this series of trying to talk to myself in 2015 when I first started watercoloring. I had been making art for years, but I hadn't painted. And I had a lot of questions back then about paper and brushes and paint and everything. And I had things that I didn't know then that I know now that would have gotten me along further down the road if I had known them. I do not know that 2015 Sandy would have listened to 2026 Sandy. So I don't blame you if you roll your eyes at any of the advice I have given in this series or will continue to give, because this video is going to have a part 2 because I couldn't fit it all in part 1. So be sure to subscribe so you can get part 2 next week. Before we get going, I want to lay something on the table and ask something of the community, and that is that we remain kind in the comments section. And what possibly could we get unkind about in talking about brushes? Well, if you are new to YouTube videos about brushes, you haven't looked at the comments very much, because those of us who use Sable brushes get a lot of hate out there. There are folks whose priority in their brush purchases are different than mine. I want brushes that are going to last a lifetime. I want brushes that are going to perform, that the hairs won't fall out, and that express the color and the water onto the paper in the way I expect them to do. For me, that means I use Sable brushes. And if that is something that is not your cup of tea and you just can't handle it, then please go find another YouTuber to ask your questions about brushes. I have, over the years, ended up doing a lot of brush research because I kept thinking there's got to be somebody who has figured out how to make a brush that mimics what my good brushes do. Because I know not everybody's going to spend a fortune on brushes, especially hobbyist watercolorists. Professionals, yeah, we'll treat ourselves to something good, like I have done over the years, but a lot of people can't do that. So there's got to be somebody who's making a synthetic or a vegan brush that's going to work. I have drawers of terrible, terrible brushes. I have not even given them away because they are so bad. Their hairs fall out, they drip paint like crazy. Just all kinds of things do not work with them. And yet I have continued to try. And recently I did find some brushes that I think I can make a recommendation as an alternate to my Sables. So I'm going to introduce you both to my good brushes and show you what they do. And I will show you the other set of brushes and what they do and where I find their deficiencies, but also this other set of brushes that are vegan. They will approximate the kind of feel that you're going to get from one of my good brushes. So if you want to maybe someday upgrade and get a brush that's going to be $100 brush, but right now you can't afford $100 brush, I think these are reasonable alternates. But you just need to know that there's some adaptations in your painting to make when you do that. So I'll show you a little bit of that difference here in this video, but next week I'll do another more full explanation of the difference in techniques between using my good brushes and then my secondary recommendations. Okay? Without further ado, let's get started and meet my brushes. So first, let me introduce you to the brushes while they're dry so you can see what I think a good brush should look like when it's dry. A lot of people look for a point, and they're all going to be fuzzy. This is an Escoda, one of my very favorite brushes. Many of you have commented on it in some of my videos. And as you can see, it's very soft, very fuzzy, doesn't look like it points well. And just because it looks like this doesn't mean it won't point well. And that brush and this one, both of these are about 100 and something, 116, I think, 115. The Da Vinci brush is a silver point. It's shorter, has silver point on the end. But they both perform about the same way. I use one more for traveling to other places. So when I'm taking my watercolors with me, it's easier to have a shorter brush. This one is vegan and it's only about $35. It's by Tintoretto. Pay attention to the series numbers when you look at the links in the doobly-doo, because the series is how do you pluralize that? The series are all different. And this one of the issues with it is it has these little stabby things. And I don't know why all their brushes do. I bought a couple more just to make sure that, yeah, that was really the way they do it. The Da Vinci has the same kind of little wraparound thing, and it doesn't hurt you at all. But the other one, these Tintoretto brushes will cure you of holding your brushes down tight, which you should not do anyway. But I tried to pick sizes that matched the sizes of my brushes. So I'm going to keep all of these as my YouTube brushes. So if I decide to use my less expensive brushes, then I will be using those Tintorettos. This is my Winsor and Newton brush, my first good brush that I bought way back at the beginning, and it is still perfect. Like nothing has happened to it, and it was at the time almost $200, and right now, excuse me, just a little over 200. And then this one is in the, I think, high 20s, $28 or something, Tintorettos. And it is actually a travel brush. So you can turn that cap around and make it a short brush. And it's around the same size visually, paints roughly ish the same size. They're both number 8 rounds, but you can see the Winsor and Newton has a lot more spring to it. And the Tintoretto is just very, very soft. It doesn't mean you can't paint with it, but it also means it's going to drip out water at a different rate. So it has dripped on many paintings and wrecked them. So you've got to be careful and don't overload it. So this one is we've called it all different kinds of names over the years, but it's an inlaid needle brush. And this one is a number 9. I like this one best for size, but it's way more expensive for some reason. This one is $200. The number 8, which I'm linking down below, is about 60 something dollars. Then this is my number 8 liner brush. So this is an inlaid liner versus a liner. And I'll show you the difference kind of between the two of them. But the regular liner is just really super floppy. The inlaid liner is not. Gives you different kinds of control and different kinds of marks. In the Tintoretto, this is what you get for a liner. And again, it's, super soft and squishy, doesn't have as much spring to it, but it still can do some things. So, it's not a terrible brush. And all the Tintorettos are not terrible brushes. They're not my cup of tea. I want a brush that's really going to perform the way I want it to. And these other brushes that I'm showing you are the ones that really do. So these are my 2 small brushes, and the number 4 is my workhorse. Number 2 is really only for emergency situations when I'm painting something really small and need a very, very fine detail. But they both have the same spring as that Winsor and Newton does. This one is called a number 2, believe it or not. It's also one of the travel brushes, so it comes apart. And you can see the difference in size. When one company says something's a 2 and another company says it's a 2, don't just go by that and say, well, so-and-so said you need a number 2 brush, because it's about the size of my number 4. So that's why I've put it in here, since that one is, my number 4 is more of a workhorse than is my number 2. And then we've got my flat brush. This one is about 20 something last I looked, so not expensive. And it's a Mottler brush. It's a Cosmotop spin. It's synthetic, and it does a really nice flat wash. So I'll link you to some videos with each one of these brushes in them if I remember to do it. If I don't remember, leave me comments and I will leave links in the doobly-doo. This set is a set of Da Vinci's. And I found these when I was looking for brushes for nature journaling people who don't have a fortune to spend on brushes. And I use those when I do nature journaling or urban sketching or something, because I don't want to take my good brushes out, because I have left brushes behind before. So when I'm going to a situation where, I'm just doing something quickie and very small, those Da Vinci brushes work just fine for something little. And for crafters, that might be what you're looking for. So if some of you are those kinds of people, that might be something of interest. And it's a very inexpensive set. You get a whole bunch of brushes in it. Now, what I'm doing here is mixing some watercolor stick into a bowl so I can make some color. And I've done this with a whole bunch of different colors so that I can paint the swatches onto this painting. And you can do it a lot of different ways. You can put water into a bowl first and then dip it. You can dip the stick into the water and just make a puddle of it, whatever way you want. And there's an entire video all about watercolor sticks, like tons of techniques and stuff. So I recommend, if you want to know more about them, go watch that. And now a word from our sponsor, my very own website, art-classes.com, where a brand new course just released. The abstract wash and ink class is a very relaxing way to learn about your colors and different techniques for watercolor painting. And in a very forgiving situation where we are literally just painting washes of various kinds and doodling with pens. The demonstrations are all accomplished using watercolor sticks, but you can take this class with traditional watercolor as well, although there's much more information on the sticks in the pre-class lesson, which is free. You can go see that before you even sign up for class. We'll be talking about color theory because one of the things that is going to make this class really helpful for you ongoing is the prompt series that I will be providing for you. And we're going to use 4 prompts in each one of the lessons. And I'll be talking about what I was thinking as I created each one of the pieces that we'll be doing. So you'll be able to mix and match those prompts for many, many, many future paintings and exercises in the future. The paints and brushes and paper and everything are listed in the free pre-class lesson. And you can get some new things for yourself or just work from your own stash of what you already have. And it's going to be a lot of fun. So I hope you come prepared to relax, paint, and doodle alongside some really fun lessons. In the new abstract wash and ink class, I will be using in the demonstrations watercolor sticks as well as the Tintoretto brushes. So, in case you're interested in both of those, I am having a sale this weekend, Valentine's weekend, and it's through Sunday night, my time. And you can get 15% off any course using coupon code HEARTART. HEARTART, one word. And I hope you find something that will be inspiring to you. Now, let's get back to swatching my brushes. And I'm going to just paint swatches of them on the painting that I already did using the brush that is in the painting. And this is my Escoda brush, that number 16 mop that I love. And the way you test a brush is to dip it into water and then flick it. And what does that mean? Well, you flick it. You just load it up completely and then thwap into the air. And that will show you how well it points. A lot of people will try to form it into a point with their fingers, and you want to just see what it does naturally. And that will tell you if it points well, even if the brush is fuzzy to begin with. So I am going to just swatch some of this lovely new gamboge onto the paper. And I like to try to see if I can get dry brush with any brush that I'm using. I want to see how small of a line can I get. Can I paint small details with it? Can I get good coverage? And you saw when I just swooshed this over the paper, it just went. The color just comes right out of these brushes like it wants to paint. And that's really what I look for in terms of choosing a good brush. And here I'm just adding a little bit of the stick just to give you an idea. Those sticks are pretty wonderful, to add more pigment so I can have some darker pigment around one side of that little puddle. Do the same thing with the other brush. Remember I said this one performs about the same, and it unloads color nicely as well. It makes good dry brush points, enough to get some detail in there, of course. Not as much as the Escoda brush. So I think if I had to rank the two of them, it's probably why I put the Escoda first. But this one works nicely. And like I said, I'll probably take that on a trip that I'm going to be taking in the next couple months. So rather than taking a giant brush with me. We'll see how much room I have to pack. But adding again more of the watercolor stick, you can draw right into the wet paint. And you can draw on dry paper too. It doesn't always water out, as you'll see in the other video that I've recommended you go watch for more on those. But you can see it does point nicely. It does get a good tip on it. It's just not as, I guess, needlepoint of a tip. It's a little softer than the Escoda brush. The next brush up is one that I have a history with. It has a little story. I was at the Daniel Smith store talking to my personal shopper and good friend Janice, who worked there, and she would sit me down all the time at the brush bar. And you could sit there and play with brushes. You know, if you were a serious person, they would let you play with them on the Buddha board. And they had, a couple brushes that were standard for everybody. And then they would let me test out the really expensive ones because I was a good girl and I bought a lot of stuff, I guess, as a good customer. And at one point, we got to this brush and I fell in love with it. I absolutely did. I mean, even more so than like the $400 and $800 brushes. I loved how it releases water and pigment onto the paper. At the time, it was just water onto the Buddha board, and we tested it on paper just to make sure that it worked the way that it seemed to on the Buddha board. And it was my first time really spending on myself as a watercolorist. Next up is my Da Vinci inlaid liner. And I'll show you this a little differently than the others because I want to show you how much this thing can hold. It's got that wider belly at the top. And I did one load, and I'm going to get all of this out of one load from this brush because it's holding all of that pigment in there and it doesn't drip out of the tip. A lot of these inlaid liners by other companies, and I have tried I have probably a dozen of them in my drawer that I don't like because they drip water out of the tip. This one got all that painting done except for that horizon line, just out of one dip into the watercolor paint. So it really does some beautiful things. I will be doing paintings with it so you can see how I do trees. That will be coming up in the near future. Now that's compared to this Da Vinci liner. This brush is like $40. And you can get some of that same kind of line with it. I don't find it to be as good just because it's a softer brush. I get a little more oomph out of that inlaid liner. But there are some times when this one is useful. And, for the price, it's not too bad. Just be real careful with it because those are very long hairs and you don't want to ruin a brush by just shoving it into a bag or something because it does need to be kept nice and long. And by the way, while I'm mentioning caring for your brushes, please don't leave your watercolor brushes in the water. Just never do that because that's what makes the hairs fall out. Well, at least on good brushes. On bad brushes, they just fall out on their own. Anyway, this is one of my little workhorse brushes. If I am doing small detail work, it's almost always going to be with my round number 4 or sometimes my round number 5. They both look close to the same, and I grab one or the other out of my brush container. And this one can get, kind of a wash of color if I load it up, and also some really finer details as well. This little guy does not hold water much because there's not much in a number 2 brush to hold water, but I can get, some really nice little lines with it. I can paint very small areas, and I don't paint a lot of really fine details. I try to get a lot more of that with my bigger brushes. One of my mentors once told me, use the biggest brush you can for whatever it is you're painting with, because otherwise you're going to treat it like a pencil. And whenever I get this brush out, I remind myself, this is like a pencil. Please stop using it like a pencil. You're painting right now. But there are times when you just want to add a little something. So I went back in to add just a little more to that other swoosh with this turquoise color, that sort of thing. So I don't use it a lot, but if you're somebody who does very small things and you want a good brush to do small things, then the round number 2 would be just grand for something like that. And that brings us to the Mottler brush. And this one I use a lot for skies and all sorts of things. If you saw my clock painting just a few weeks ago, it was my first big full painting here on the channel, and it used this brush quite a bit for the window in the background, etc. So lots of uses for it, but primarily skies for me. As I start doing some landscapes on this channel, you'll start seeing that brush more. And it's only like 24 bucks, I think. So it's a decent brush. These are all of my kind of go-to brushes you'll see on this channel a lot. They're all Sables minus the Mottler brush, which is a synthetic. I've turned the painting around and we'll start now on the Tintoretto vegan brushes. The very soft heads on them and those little pokey things around the brushes that might cure you of holding your brush like a pencil. If you hold it down there, you're holding it wrong. And you can see the shake test really didn't do much for this brush. It does have several points to it. When you do that, doesn't mean it's not going to load and have just one point, but it, just on its own, it didn't make one point. These brushes do want to be used immediately, shall I say. They want you to paint with them instantly, no hovering over your paper because they will drip. They will release pigment before you're ready if you're not careful. So I just don't load them fully. I just wipe off any excess because I don't want to have any drips. I've ruined a couple paintings that I tried with these because they just dripped when I wasn't quite ready. So that's just something to get used to. But I can still get some small details with this brush, even though it's, nice big fat one. I like a brush that gives you those options so you don't have to go back and, load up 3 different brushes to get 3 different kinds of marks. I like when one brush will do that for you. This is the round number 8, and it's the only one that I found kind of a apples to apples number match to the brushes that I use. It's I would use this in the same circumstances that I would use my round number 8. So it's good that way. But as I mentioned before, every company sizes their brushes differently. They call them different things. So just looking online at brushes, I know from years of looking at websites and trying to find brushes, everybody's got different things, and you just have to buy it and try it. And unfortunately, you can't return brushes because once you've got them dirtied with paint, that does not typically allow you to take it back. Okay, so this is the before and after on that liner brush, and it gets a very nice long point to it. But I want to show you something about this brush and how it does this with a bunch of different of the Tintoretto brushes. And of course, it didn't cooperate on the first time I tried it because it's inconsistent. Kind of wish it was more consistent so I'd know when it's going to drip on me. But this time I loaded it up and you can see it drips. That's just what I'm talking about with these other brushes. I had that happen a number of times. And depending on the mixture of the paint, maybe you can get used to mixing your paint in particular ways that will stop that from happening, or just wiping it off. But it makes it a challenge for me because I'm used to my other brushes that don't do that, that don't perform that way. And this one is softer than my other liner brush. I can still get some marks with it, but I tend to end up with some accidental jagged marks instead of all smooth ones. But I think that's probably a matter of practice because I haven't spent enough time working with these brushes to really be all that in a bag of chips with it at this moment. But the new abstract wash and ink class, I use this and we do some really cool effects with it using those crazy lines in creating one of the pieces. That brings us to the round number 2, which, as I said, in my world would be a number 4 in my other brushes. So be careful when you hear some artists tell you, oh, I used a round number whatever for this particular thing. Not every company is going to use the same measurement for what they call a 2 or a 4 or a 6 or an 8. It's just a thing, and it makes buying brushes really hard. And it's why I have drawers and drawers full of brushes because I've bought so many of them trying to find the right brush. None of them will make you a better painter if you don't paint. I'll just put it that way. You've got to keep painting, and a lot of people just think that as soon as you touch a magic brush, it's going to make you magically better. And it doesn't do that. It doesn't work that way. This is the Cosmotop brushes, Cosmotop spins from Vinci. And these are the ones that I now recommend for anybody who's doing small works. So whether you're doing craft projects or if you're doing nature journaling or even Bible journaling or, urban sketching. These are brushes that I use when I go out to sketch so I don't lose them, because I have been known to leave a brush behind. Sorry, yes, brushes are left behind. Fortunately, it's never been one of my really good brushes because I don't take my really good brushes out with me a lot of times. I do when I'm going to do plein air and like do a real painting, but if I'm just doing sketching, I don't trust myself with my good brushes because that would be bad. But these brushes don't hold a lot of paint, so you do end up going back to dip into the pigment again and again because they're synthetics, and synthetics often aren't made to hold a lot. But when you're working in a tiny sketchbook, you often don't want to have a whole ton of paint. Like, you don't want lots of washes and big things on a little sketchbook, especially because sketchbooks are made of cruddy paper, because they know we won't pay for arches in our tiny sketchbooks. So they make them with cheap paper, and that usually can't handle a ton of water, but it can handle little things like this. And these little brushes can do that very nicely. You can use these in conjunction, of course, with your other good brushes. One last thing before I go. In my watercolor stick video, I did a giveaway. There's a giveaway of a painting and a bunch of bookmarks that I made, and only one person claimed they're winning. In the following video, I listed all the winners, and y'all didn't watch it, so you didn't find out if you won. I'm going to give you a few more days, and if you don't go watch that video and find out if you won, then guess what? I'm going to pick different winners, and I want you to have your chance if you were one of the first selected. So please check that out. Links in the doobly-doo. And I will see you again next week with part 2 of this brush comparison between the Sables and the vegan brushes. So if you want to come back for that, hit that subscribe button, and I will see you next Saturday. Bye-bye.